So, in chapter 19, Victor and Clerval arrive in London in October. Victor continues to despair, avoiding people unless they have information that can help him create a second monster. Clerval, in contrast, is how Victor used to, excited by learning, wanting to meet and talk with everybody. Clerval's innocence here contrasts with Victor and shows the joy and delight Victor's ambitions has cost him. Victor and Clerval now travel to Scotland. There, Victor and Clerval leaves Clerval with a friend and travels on alone. He goes to a remote island in Orkney, sets up a lab, and works in solitude on a secret project. Once again, you can see that Victor has isolated himself from society. Whenever he does this, he makes bad, reckless decisions that will always cause disasters. And you can see that this is not a lesson learned for him. Some people learn the things the hard way, but I think he learns it the impossible way, to be honest. Now, one more thing that we may need to focus on a little bit. We currently have around 5 chapters left, so we are going to have a book report after this. So do be prepared to take notes for anything that you need. Now back to the chapter. With Frankenstein, now why is this not loading? Okay, so here's a bit of an info and trivia on you. Trivia for you guys. So one of the most important things is that the tone shift here. Clerval enjoys nature, life, discovery, while Victor becomes increasingly disturbed in his secret mission. The chapter here reveals the themes of isolation, guilt, consequences of ambitions, things like that. Victor removes himself from society to carry out what is the monster's threat, much like he did the first time. Victor, here, we can see a bit of a foreshadowing that Victor's discomfort and horror while building the second creature hints at future tragedy. His internal conflict would suggest that he might not be able to follow through with promise as well. A few interesting insights here. The Orkney Islands are a real and very remote group of islands north of mainland Scotland. The author, Shelley, uses this harsh setting to emphasize Victor's self-imposed exile and inner torment. The bleak landscape, all of Victor's fears, and the very scary and I would say grotesque nature of his work all is boiling down to what is the Gothic atmosphere, typical of the novel, of course. Also, one of the reasons why Frankenstein was the one to suffer so many losses is mainly because of how the author, Shelley, is trying to make a parallel between Victor's and her life. Mary also experienced loss and grief, losing their children and her husband Percy. And her husband Percy Shelley later also died young. The emotional alienation that Victor feels also echoes that of her own struggles with death and responsibility. Okay, so now let's move on to chapter 20. We only have about 100 we only have about like 100 pages left. I think some of which are blank for for a bit less than 100 pages. We have a bit less than 100 pages. Okay, let's continue with chapter 20. Who wants to read chapter 20? Um, Pam, can you please proceed? Pam, can you please proceed and read?
I sat one evening in my laboratory. The sun had set, and the moon was just rising. It was too dark to work, and for whatever reason, I began to consider the likely effects of what I was doing. 3 years before, I had been engaged in the same manner. I had created a fin which unparalleled barbarity had filled my heart with bitter remorse. I was now about to form another creature, and I had no idea what sort of being she might turn out to be. She might be 1,000 times worse than her mates. She might delight in murder for its own sake. He had sworn to leave behind the world of men and hide himself in deserts, but she had not refused to comply agreements made before her creation. The two beings might even hate each other. The creature who already
Yeah.
lived hated his own deformity. He might find the new being equally repulsive or more repulsive. She also might turn with disgust from him to the superior beauty of man. She might leave him. Then he would be alone again, rejected this time by one of his own species. Even if the two of them left Europe and settled in some unpopulated part of the New World, there might be trouble. They would, in all probability, have children, and those children might produce a race of devils who would torment and terrify mankind. They have a right for my own benefit to inflict this curse upon future generations. For the first time, the, the wickedness of my promise burst upon me. I trembled to think that future ages might curse me. They might view me as a wretch who purchased peace for himself by endangering the whole human race. As I trembled at this thought, I saw by the light of the moon the creature at the window. A ghastly wrinked his lips as he purred in at me. Yes, he had followed me in my travels, and now he had come to observe my work and claim the honor he had demanded. As I looked on him, his face expressed the most horrible cruelty and dishonesty. I could not bear the thought of creating another like to him. So, trembling with passion, I tore to pieces the thing I was creating. The wretch saw me destroy the creature on whose future existence he depended for happiness, and with a whole of devilish misery and revenge, he turned away. I made a sincere promise never to return to my work again, and then sat down exhausted. Several hours passed. I sat near the window, gazing on the sea. It was peaceful, almost motionless. All nature seemed to resting under the eye of the quiet moon. I sat silent for a long while. Then I heard the paddling of oars near the shore, and someone landing a boat and walking towards my house. A few moments later, I heard the creaking on my door, as if someone was trying to open it softly. I trembled from head to foot. I had a sense who was at the door. I thought about running to one of the peasants who lived nearby, but I was overcome by a sense of helplessness and remained rooted to the spot. Presently, I heard footsteps along the passage. The door opened, and the wretch whom I dreaded appeared. Shutting the door, he approached me and said, "You have destroyed the work which you began. You have broken your promise. I have followed you all this time. I crept along the shores of the Rhine. I have lived many months in the hills of England and among the wilds of Scotland. I have endured fatigue and cold and hunger. How dare you destroy my hopes? Get out of here, I shouted. I am breaking my promise. I will never create another like yourself. I will not. The hour of my decision is past, and your power over me is at an end. Your threats cannot move me to do an act of wickedness. They only serve to convince me that I have made the right decision. I will not make the same mistake twice. I will not let set loosen upon the earth another demon that delights in killing. Go, I am firm, and there is nothing you can say that will make me change my mind. The monster saw determination in my face and gnashed his teeth in anger. Shall each man, he cried, find a wife for his companion, and each beast have his mate, while only I'm left alone? Man, you may hate me, but beware, your hours will pass in dread and misery, and soon the lightning bolt will fall, which must destroy your happiness forever. Are you to be happy while I suffer? You can defeat my other passions, but revenge remains revenge from this moment on. I swear revenge will be dearer to me than light or food. I may die, but first you, my tyrant and tormentor, shall curse the sun that gazes on your misery. Beware, for I am fearless and therefore powerful. I will watch with the willingness of a snake, that I may sting with its venom. Man, you will live to regret the injuries you have inflicted. They will kiss. Do not poison the air with these weak words. I have declared my decision, and I am no coward to bend beneath words. Leave me. I have made up my mind. Very well, I go, but remember, I will be with you on your wedding night. I started forward and exclaimed, Billion, before you sign the death warrant, be sure that you yourself are safe. I would have seized him, but he slipped away. For a few moments I saw him in his boat, which shot across the water and was soon lost amidst the waves. All was again silent, but his words rang in my ears. I burned the rage. I woke up and down in my room, while my imagination brought for 1,000 images to torture and sting me. Why had I not followed him when I kept him? Why had I allowed him to depart? I trembled to think who might be his next victim. And then I thought again of his word. I will be with you on your wedding night. That then was the moment when my destiny would be revealed. At that moment, he intended to kill me and satisfy his weakness. The prospect did not move me to fear until I thought of Elizabeth. When I thought of the endless sorrow she would feel when her lover was snatched from her, I felt the tears well up in my eyes. I determined not to fall before my enemy without a bitter struggle. That night, I put my basket into a little boat and sailed out about 4 miles from the shore. I felt as if I were hiding the evidence from some dreadful crime, but I went ahead. I threw my basket into the sea and listened to the gurgling sound as it sank. I then sailed away from the spot. The sea was calm, and I suddenly felt exhausted. I fixed the rudder and stretched myself at the bottom of the boat to take a short nap. Clouds hid the moon, and I heard only the sound of the boat as it cut through the waves. The murmurs soothed me, and in a short time I was sound asleep. When I awoke, I found that the sun had already risen. The wind was blowing, and the waves threatened the safety of my little boat. I found that the wind had driven me far from the coast from which I had embarked. I tried to change my course, but quickly found the boat was filling with water, blown in by the wind. My only option was to allow the boat to be driven on by the wind. I confess that I felt a little sensations of terror. I had no compass with me, and I knew very little about the geography of this part of the world. It occurred to me that I might be driven out into the wide Atlantic and starve to death, or I might be swallowed up by the waters that rolled around me. I had already been out many hours and felt the pain of a burning thirst. I looked up at the sky, which was covered by clouds. I looked upon the sea and felt that it might be my grave. Friend, I exclaimed, your task is already fulfilled. I thought of Elizabeth, of my mother, of my father, and of Henry. All left behind, the master would be free to take his revenge on them. Several more hours passed. Suddenly, I saw a line of highland in the distance. Tears of joy gushed from my eyes. How changeable are our feelings, and how strange is that clinging love we have of life even in the excess of misery. I constructed another cell, course toward the land. It had a wild and rocky appearance. However, as I drew nearer, I noticed traces of cultivation. I even saw a few ships near the shore. Since I had exhausted, I decided to sail directly towards the town. I thought this would be a place where I could find something to eat. As I drew near, I noticed a small town and a good harbor, which I entered, my heart pounding with joy at my unexpected escape. As I was occupied in tying up the boat, several people crowded around. They seemed They seemed much surprised at my appearance, but instead of offering me any assistance, they whispered together with gestures that at any other time might have produced in me a slight sensation of panic. As it was, I merely remarked that they spoke English. I therefore addressed them in that language. My good friends, I said, will you be so kind as to tell me where I am? You will know her soon enough, replied a man with a hoarse voice. Maybe you will come to a place and I will not prove much with your taste, but you will not be asked for your opinion as to your quarters. I promise you. I was surprised to receive such a red answer from a stranger, and I was also concerned by the frowning and angry faces of his companions. Why do you answer me so roughly? I replied. Surely it is not the custom of Englishmen to receive strangers so readily. I do not know, said the man, what the custom of the English may be, but it is the custom of the Irish to hate animals, to hate to hate criminals. Then an unpleasant-looking man tapped me on the shoulder and said, "Come, sir, you must follow me to Mr. Kerwin's to give an account of yourself." Who is Mr. Kerwin's, and why I am to give an account to myself? Is this not a free country? I sure, free enough for honest folk. Mr. Kerwin is a judge, and you are to give an account of the death of gentleman who was found murdered here last night. This answer startled me, but I presently covered myself. I was innocent. That could easily be proved. I therefore followed the man in silence and was led to one of the best houses in the town. I was ready to pass out from fatigue and hunger, but being surrounded by a crowd, I thought it wise to gather all my strength so that my were not interpreted as nevertheless of constitutional goods. I did not anticipate the disaster that was about to overwhelm me.
Okay, thank you. This is quite a long chapter. Okay. So chapter 20. In one night in his lab, Victor worries that the new creature he's creating might refuse to live away from humans, or that two might produce a race of devils. Just then, he looks up and sees the monster grinning at the window. Overwhelmed by loathing, Victor destroys his work. Outside, the monster howls in agonies and disappears. The monster might have been grinning in joy at the sight of its companion, but Victor's superficial just prejudice is too powerful. He once again betrays the monster's trust and sentences it to permanent isolation. Hours later, the monster returns to Victor's lab. It now refers to Victor only as man and vows revenge. It promises, "I shall be with you on your wedding night." Victor thinks the monster means to kill him on that night and fears for Elizabeth, left alone as the window. The monster now sees Victor as his enemy, as man, and vows revenge. Victor's fear for his own life shows that he doesn't understand the monster's true misery, which is isolation. A letter then soon arrives from Clerval suggesting they resume their travel. Victor gathers up his laboratory materials and rows out into the ocean to dump them. Victor is so happy he takes a nap in his boat, but he wakes up to rough weather and can't get back to shore. Just as begins to panic, the winds ease. Victor panics in the boat because he fears being cut off from land, from human society. It is the same fear as the monsters, but Victor's prejudice doesn't let him recognize it. When Victor lands, a group of angry townspeople gathers around his boat. He's a suspect in the murder that occurred the previous night, and is sent to meet with Mr. Kerwin, a local magistrate. This is a cliffhanger ending. It seems that the monster has already taken some revenge. A little bit of Victor here is torn between two evils, creating a second one and risking disaster, or breaking a promise and facing vengeance. There's no good choice, only the lesser evil. Also, the phrase, "I will be with you on your wedding night," often mistaken by Victor to mean he will be killed. This line shows the monster's cunning cruelty. It is one of the literature's greatest examples of dramatic art. You might already guess that Elizabeth won't have a happy ending in this book. There's also, again, another parallel to Genesis. Just as God created Eve for Adam, Victor nearly creates a partner for his creation, but backs out. This refusal to fulfill the role of creator leads to chaos. Also, the wild Orkney Islands in the stormy sea emphasizes Victor's own emotional storm. Nature reflects his inner turmoil, a technique called pathetic fallacy. This is something that is used a lot, but only usually in happy endings. It's very rarely used in things like this.
Hi.
Hi, okay. I'll continue if you have, it's already recorded, so you don't need to worry about that. I think you should check out the last parts because we only have about 30 minutes left though.
Can I have the document?
I sent the document last time. Did you?
Can you send the chat, please?
Okay. There you go. It's still loading though, so it might take a while. No, where? Oh yeah. So one more thing is about Victor's growing paranoia. The way Victor immediately imagines a monster's invasion or destructive offspring shows how very consumed he has been by fear. This is also one of the things that the author is setting up, so that author is setting up. Please do not expect for Frankenstein to end in a happy ending. That is my only warning. Okay, who would like to read chapter 21? Ivan, can you read chapter 21? Ivan, are you there? Okay, Lily, can you please read chapter 21?
Okay, chapter 21. I was soon introduced to the judge, an old benevolent man with calm and mild manners. He looked upon me with some degree of severity. Then he spoke to the men around me, asking them who appeared as witnesses on this occasion. About half a dozen men came forward. The judge chose one of them, and he gave his testimony about what had happened. He stated that he had been fishing at the night before his son and brother-in-law, Daniel, took it. About 10 o'clock, they observed a strong northerly blast rising, and they steered it back into port. It was a very dark night, as the moon has not been risen. They had not landed at the harbor, but, as they often did, at a creek about 2 miles below. He walked on first, carrying some of the fishing equipment, and friends followed him at some distance. As he was proceeding along the sands, he struck his foot against something and fell on the ground. His companions came up to assist him. In the light of the lanterns, they found that he had fallen on the body of a man who seemed to be dead. The first thought that was the corpse of some person who had been drowned and thrown on shore by the waves. However, on explanation, they found that the clothes were not wet and the body was still warm. They carried it to the cottage of an old woman near the spot and tried to restore it to life. But all their attempts were in vain. It appeared to be a handsome young man, about 25 years of age. He had apparently been strangled, but there was no sign of violence except the black marks of fingers on his neck. The first part of his testimony did not in the least interest me, but when the mark of the fingers was mentioned, I remembered the murder of my brother and felt myself extremely nervous. My limbs trembled and a mist came over my eyes. I was obliged to lean on a chair for support. The judge studied me closely and seemed to think my behavior was revealing. The son confirmed his father's account, but when Daniel Nugget was called, he added an important detail. He swore that just before the fall of his companion, he saw a boat with a single man in it at a short distance from the shore, and as far as he can judge by the light of a few stars, it was the same boat in which I had just landed. Next, a woman was asked to give a statement. She stated that she lived near the beach and was standing at the door of her cottage, waiting for the return of the fisherman. But an hour before, she heard of the discovery of the body. She also saw at the same time a boat with only one man in it pushed off from that part of the shore where the corpse was afterwards found. Another woman stated that the fishermen had brought the body into her house. It was not cold. They put it into a bed and rubbed, but the life was quite gone. Several other men were questioned concerning my landing. They agreed that with the strong north wind that had arisen during the night, it was very likely, due to the wind, I was unable to travel far and been applying to return almost the same spot which I had departed. Since the dead man was a stranger, they concluded that I had brought the body from some other place. Disappointed, disposited, and sailed around in confusion in the darkness and put into the harbor, thinking it was a good deal farther from the place where I had deposited the corpse than in fact it was. Mr. Kerwin, after hearing this evidence, desired that I should be taken into the room where the body lay for burial, so they could see what effect the sight of it was produced upon me. This idea was probably suggested by the extreme nervousness
I had exhibited. That's
I'm sorry, what did you say?
just continue.
Okay, so this idea was probably suggested with the extreme nervousness I had exhibited when the mode of the murder had been described. I was accordingly led by the judge and several other persons to the inn. I could not help being struck by the strange coincidences that had been taken during this eventful night. However, knowing that I had been conservation with the several persons on the island I had inhabited about the same time that the body had been found, I was not worried about the outcome of the investigation. I entered the room where the corpse lay and was led up to the coffin. How can I describe my devastations on seeing it? I gasped with horror, nor can I think about that terrible moment even today without shuddering. The questioning, the
Uh,
okay, the presence of judges and witnesses, all of it passed like a dream from my memory when I saw the lifeless form of Henry Clerval stretched before me. I gasped for breath, and throwing myself on the body, I exclaimed, "Have I deprived you also, my dearest Henry, of life? Too, I have already destroyed. Other victims await their destiny. But you, Henry, my friend!" My body could no longer support the suffering that I endured, and I was carried out of the room in strong convulsions. I fell into a fever, and lay for 2 months on the verge of death. My ravings, as I afterward heard, was frightful. I called myself the murderer of freedom, justice, and of Henry. Sometimes I begged my attendants to assist me. In the destruction of the fiend, what is that word? Of the
And the fiend.
fiend, by warmth, I was persecuted, and at others I felt the fingers of a monster grasping my neck, and screamed aloud in terror. Fortunately, as I spoke in my native language, Mr. Kerwin alone understood me. But my desperate and bitter cries were sufficient to be frightened than other witnesses. Why did I not die? More miserable than man ever was before. Why did I not sink into forgetfulness and rest? Of what materials were I made that I could resist so many shocks? But I was doomed to live, and in 2 months I found myself awaking as from a dream in a prison, stretched on a wretched bed, surrounded by jailers and all the miserable equipment of the dungeon. It was morning, I remember, when I thus awoke to understanding. I had forgotten the details of how it happened, and only felt as some great misfortune had suddenly overwhelmed me. However, when I looked around and saw the bare window and the fittedness room, it all came back to me, and I groaned bitterly. My groans disturbed an old woman who was sleeping in a chair beside me. She had hired nurse, the wife of one of the turnkeys. Her face was hard and rude. It was the face of a person who used to see a misery without sympathizing. Her tone expressed completely indifference. He addressed me in English, and the voice struck me as one I had heard during my suffering. "Are you better now, sir?" she asked. I replied in the same language, with a very weak voice. "I believe I am. But if it be all true, if indeed I did not dream, I am sorry that I am still alive to feel this misery and horror." "For that matter," replied the old woman, "if you mean about the gentleman and you murderer, I believe it would be better for you if you were dead, for I imagine it will go hard with you. However, that's none of my business. I am sent to nurse you and get you well. I do my duty with a safe conscience. It would be good if everybody did the same." I turned with distress from the woman, and my mind began to wander. As the images floated before me became more distinct, I grew feverish. There were no more near me, who can smooth me with the gentle voice of love, no dear hand to support me. The visitant came and prescribed medicines, and the old woman prepared them for me. The total carelessness was visible in the first, and the expression of cruelty was strongly marked in the face of the second. Who could be interested in the fate of a murderer? Who could be interested in the fate of a murderer but the hangman who would gain his fee? These were my first reflections, but I soon learned that Mr. Curwen has shown me great kindness. He has caused the best room in the prison to be prepared for me, and it was he who provided a physician and a nurse. It is true, he seldom came to see me, for although he desired to relieve the suffering of every human creature, he did not wish to endure the suffering and miserable ravings of a murderer. He came, therefore, from time to time when I to see that I was not rejected, but his visits were short and infrequent. One day, while I was gradually recovering, I was seated in a chair, my eyes half open and my cheeks red like those in death. I was overcome by the gloom and misery. I felt that death would be better than remaining into in a world full of misery. Then I considered whether I should just declare myself guilty and suffer the penalty of the law. After all, I was less innocent than poor Justice had been. Such were my thoughts when the door of my apartment opened and Mr. Kerwin entered, his face expressed sympathy and kindness. He drew a chair close to mine and spoke to me in French. I fear that this place is very shocking to you. Can I do anything to make you more comfortable? I thank you, but all that you mention is nothing to me. On the whole world there is no comfort which I am capable of receiving. I know that the sympathy of a stranger can be but of little relief to one beaten down as you are. Why so strange a misfortune? But you will, I hope, soon be released, for I am confident that the evidence can be easily brought to free you from the criminal charge. That is my last concern. I have, as a result of a series of strange events, become the most miserable of human beings. Pursued and torn as I have been seen, can death be any evil to me? Nothing indeed could be more unfortunate and unbearable than the strange chances that have lately occurred. You were thrown by some surprising accident on the shore, known for its possibility, seized immediately and charged with murder. The first sight that was presented to your yeah your eyes was the body of your friend, murdered in so unaccountable a manner and placed, as it were, by some fiend across your path. As Mr. Kewen said these things, I was surprised at the knowledge he had concerning me. I suppose some of the astonishment was visible on my face, for he hurried to say, as soon as you were taken ill, all the papers you had with you were brought me. I examined them so I might discover some way to contact your relatives and send them an account of your misfortune and illness. I found several letters, including one from your father. I wrote immediately to Verena. Nearly 2 months have passed since I sent my letter. But you are ill. Even now you shake. You are unfit for examination of any kind. This suspense is 1,000 times worse than the most horrible news. Tell me what new sense of death has been acted. Let me know whose murder I am now to mourn. Your family is perfectly well, said Mr. Kerwin with gentleness, and someone, a friend, has come to visit you. I know not what chain of thought the idea presented itself, but it also darted into my mind that the murderer had come to mock me in my misery and taunt me the death of Henry Clerval as a way of forcing me to comply with his hellish desires. I put my hand before my eyes and cried out in pain, "Oh, take him away! I cannot see him. For God's sake, do not let him enter." Mr. Kerwin regarded me with a troubled expression. He could not help regarding my explanation as the result of my guilt, and said in rather a assertive tone, "I should have thought, young man, that the presence of your father would have been welcome instead of inspiring such violent hatred." "My father!" I cried, while every feature and every muscle relaxed from worry to pleasure. Had my father really come? Oh, how kind! How very kind! But where is he? Why does he not come to me? My change of mood surprised and pleased the judge. Perhaps he thought that my internal explanation was a momentary return of the tradition. At any rate, he promptly resumed his former kindness. He rose and left the room with my nurse. A moment later my father entered. Nothing at that moment could give me greater pleasure than the arrival of my father. I stretched out my hand to him and cried, "Are you safe then, Aunt Elizabeth, Aunt Ernest?" My father calmed me with a source after what there. He did what he could to raise my spirits, but he soon felt that a prison could not be the place of cheerfulness. "What a place is this that you inhabit, my son?" he said, looking mournfully at the bare windows and wretched appearance of the room. "You travelled to seek happiness, but death seemed to pursue you, and poor Henry Crowell." The name of my friend was too much for me to endure in my weak state. I began to cry. "Alas, yes," I replied, "some horrible fate hangs over me." We were not allowed to talk for long. Mr. Curwen came in and decided that my strength could not be exhausted for too much exertion. But the presence of my father was to me like that of my good angel, and I gradually recovered my health. As sickness left me, I grew miserable. The image of Henry Clever was constantly before me, ghastly and blurred. More than one place before the verses of these memories drew me made my friends fear a dangerous life. Alas, what did they preserve to miserable and detested a life? It was certainly so that I might fulfill my destiny, which is now drawing to a close. Soon, oh, very soon, death will be a string with dropping planes that come and go and relieve me from the mighty weight of the suffering that crushes me. After 3 months in prison, although I was still weak and in danger of a relapse, I was obliged to travel 100 miles to the country town where trials are held. Mr. Cohen had collected witnesses and framed my defense. It was proved that I was on the ordinary lands at the hour. The body of my friend was found, and I was released from prison. My father was delighted that I was free and able to return to my native country. I did not share these feelings, for to me the walls of the dungeon or a palace were equally hateful. The cup of life was poisoned forever. Although the sun shone upon me, I saw around me nothing but a thick and frightful darkness with no light but the glimmer of two eyes that glared at me. Sometimes they were the expressive eyes of Henry, frozen by death. Sometimes they were the watery, clouded eyes of the monster as I first saw them in my room at Inconstant. How do we say that word? Inconstant, right? Oh, okay. So my father talked of Jovina and of Elizabeth and Ernest, but his words only grew groans from me. Sometimes, indeed, I felt a wish for happiness or a pang of homesickness. Most of the time, though, I simply lay in bed, sinking deeper and deeper into misery. In moments of despair, I even thought of putting an end to my life. My father kept a close eye on me to make sure I did not try to kill myself. Yet one duty remained to me, and when I remembered it, I was able to overcome my selfish misery. It was necessary that I return without delay to Trevina in order to watch over the lines of those I loved and guard them from the murder. My father wanted to delay our departure. He worried that I was not healthy enough to make the journey. My strength was gone.
You
was
forgot this part here?
I don't think so. Oh, yeah. If any chance led me to him, only if he dared again to confront me, I might be able to kill him. My father wanted to delay our departure. He worried that I was not healthy enough to make the journey. My strength was gone. I was a mere skeleton, and fever took over my wasted body. Still, I was eager to leave Ireland, and my father eventually gave in. He boarded a ship bound for the French port of Le Havre, and Have and sailed with a fair wind from the Irish shores. At midnight that night I lay on the ship's deck. I looked at the stars and listened to the dashing of the waves. I greeted the darkness that shut Ireland from my sight, and my pulse beat with a feverish joy. And I reflected that I should soon see Jovina. The past seemed a frightful dream, yet I knew it was no dream. Henry, my best friend, had fallen victim to me and the monster I had created. On that ship, I ran through, in my memory, all the events of my life. I thought of my quiet happiness while rejoicing with my family in Judea, the death of my mother, and the departure of Inconstant. I remembered shaking the mad intestine that hurried me on to the creation of my hideous enemy, and I called to mind the night when he came to life. I was unable to pursue the train of thought further. A thousand feelings pressed upon me, and I wept bitterly. Towards morning, I had a terrible nightmare. I felt the fiends grip on my neck and could not free myself from it. Groans and cries rang in my ears. My father was watching over me. He noticed my restlessness and woke me up. When I saw the waves in the sky, the dashing waves were around me, the cloudy sky above me. The fiend was nowhere to be seen. A sense of forgetfulness came over me. I felt that the truth had been established between the present hour and the inexorable stretches future. And so we voyage on.
Okay, thank you for that. Now, so what happened in chapter 21 is that at Mr. Curwen's office, Victor learns that a man in his mid-20s was found dead on the shore with black marks on his neck. When Victor is shown the corpse, he is horrified to recognize it. It is Henry Clerval, his beloved friend, strangled in the same way the creature killed William. Clerval's death is a major turning point in the novel and another tragedy caused by Victor's broken promise. The monster's revenge is already well underway. His threat to be with Victor on his wedding night now even carries more weight. A theme of guilt now intensifies. Victor feels responsible for every death caused by the creature. And also, Victor's mental and physical health collapses. You can see that Victor is arrested for a crime his creation committed, almost really emphasizing the theme of creator versus creation and blurred things like responsibility. Clerval also represents the life that Victor could have had. Joyful, curious, connected to humanity, that kind of thing. His death symbolizes the destructions of Victor's last link to hope, friendship, and normalcy. Now, unlike other authority figures in the novel, Curwen is very much compassionate. He takes care of Victor and even arranges for his father to come. This contrasts with the injustice Justine had faced early in the novel, showing how class and gender influences justice. There's also the final part of the monster's threat is already yet to come. Victor still has his writing ahead, and the reader, and we can already sense that there is something that is awful that is waiting. So we're going to be stopping it here today. Next chapter will be chapter 22. Right now we have 3 chapters left. So goodbye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye. Class ends now, so you guys can go.
Bye.
Bye bye.